At exactly 3:35 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up in the dark, and I grabbed it without thinking. It was a notification from my bank. At first, I thought maybe it was a payment confirmation or some kind of security alert. But when I saw the number staring back at me, every bit of air in my lungs disappeared. Negative $45,516.21. That was the number stamped in cold, unwavering font on my account. Gone, just like that. Not a mistake, not a glitch. The money had vanished. I bolted upright in bed, heart hammering in my chest. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, refreshed the app again and again. Like maybe if I stared hard enough, reality would shift. But it didn't. That number stayed exactly the same. My name is Jacqueline Wilson, and if you're hearing this, I ask only one thing. Please keep listening, because I need to tell you how that number, that exact moment, changed my life in a way I never could have imagined. That number was more than digits. It was a mirror, reflecting a truth I hadn't wanted to face. A truth about my family. A truth I wish I had known much, much earlier. This all unraveled during what should have been a time of celebration, the week I turned 32. Most people spend their birthdays surrounded by love, laughter, maybe a slice of cake and a few balloons. I spent mine unraveling everything I thought I understood about loyalty and blood. I didn't hesitate. I dialed my father immediately. The line rang twice before his voice answered on speaker. I could hear the faint echo of music in the background, the clinking of glasses, my mother's laugh bubbling up like everything was completely normal, like their world hadn't just collapsed mine. "Hey Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "There's something wrong with my account. It's maxed out. Did something happen?" There was a pause. Not long, just enough to feel the hesitation. Then his voice came through, laced with irritation. "You're always so dramatic," he said flatly. "The family needed help. Your mom had that surgery, your brother's truck broke down, and we were behind on the mortgage." I stared at the phone in disbelief. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. They hadn't asked, they hadn't warned me, nothing. "Why didn't you ask me?" I asked, my voice tight. He didn't even flinch. "We didn't need to. You owe us." Then came my mother's voice, clear and cold, like ice cracking in a glass. "Besides," she said, a bitter laugh curling at the edges of her words, "what were you going to do with that money anyway? Buy yourself some cake and candles? We had better plans." Silence. A deep, hollow silence. It stretched across the line like a canyon. And that silence, I realized, was the only birthday gift they felt I deserved. I exhaled slowly. My hands were shaking, but my voice didn't waver. "Then don't ever call me again," I said. And I meant every syllable. I hung up and set the phone down with a finality I'd never known before. I got out of bed and walked to my desk. The clock read 3:52 a.m. I didn't go back to sleep. I logged into every financial account I had. I checked auto payments, contracts, legal documents, everything. They had assumed that because I was the dependable one, the overachiever, the success story, that I would always be, that I would keep sacrificing, keep giving, keep covering the bills and emergencies and late payments. But they were wrong. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't be their foundation anymore. I would be the fault line that finally shook things loose. The mortgage? Canceled. It was in my name. My mother's credit was too low to qualify, so I had signed for it. Not anymore. The truck? Repossessed by noon the next day. I filed a report for unauthorized use with the bank. It wasn't mine anymore, and they had crossed the line. For student loans? Frozen. I had been the co-signer, yes, but now, citing financial hardship, I legally removed myself from the agreement. I did everything by the book, without a single shout or fight. No angry texts, no confrontations. Just quiet, efficient steps away from the chaos. That pain they caused me, I turned it into action. I funneled every ounce of betrayal into deliberate, powerful movement. Their birthday gift to themselves, stealing from me, became the gift that finally woke me up. By the next morning, my phone was on fire. Calls, voicemails, messages stacked one after another. My lock screen was a cascade of missed connections. Some were furious, some confused, and some had the nerve to be kind, as if sugar could patch bullet holes. "Jacqueline, the truck's gone. What's happening?" "Honey, the mortgage something. Something's off. The bank says it's in default. Can you explain?" "Please, just call us. We're family." Family. That word only seems to matter to people like them when everything's falling apart, when they need something. Where was that sacred word when they drained my account without permission? Where was it when they decided my hard work was theirs to spend? I didn't respond. I was too busy. freezing my credit, changing every password, calling companies, and removing my name from every shared responsibility. I was pulling the plugs on every socket they had been feeding from for years. They forgot something crucial. I wasn't just a kind daughter or a generous sister. I was the linchpin. My name was on the titles, on the documents, on the lines that required trust. I was the co-singer, the guarantor, the fallback. And they used me like a bank card with unlimited credit and zero security. But it wasn't about the $45,000, 0 cents. It was about how easy it was for them to take it, how comfortable they were in the theft. No shame, no remorse, no hesitation. They ruined my birthday, the day I turned 32, with cold precision and entitled hearts. These were the same people who once taught me what love was supposed to look like, but now, it felt like the definition had always been rigged. They sold me a version of love, then forged my name on the contract. I scrolled through old messages from the last holiday season. "We're so proud of you. You're our miracle. You've made it, kid." I used to cry reading those. I thought they meant it. Now I just felt hollow. If I was their miracle, why did they treat me like a bottomless ATM with a heartbeat? So I did what they did, silently. I disconnected. I ended every tie. While their messages grew more desperate, I breathed. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fix everything. I wasn't their lifeline anymore. I was the wall they couldn't scale. And I wasn't done. By Saturday, they came to my house. That's how far the desperation had sunk. I watched through the peephole. My father paced the porch, face red, steps frantic like he still had control. My mother stood behind him, sobbing loud enough to drown out the doorbell. Her leopard print sweater shook with every exaggerated cry. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. I let them yell, scream, plead. To me, it was all static, just noise from people who had mistaken access for love. Because yelling doesn't mean anything without respect. They stood outside for what felt like forever, pounding on the front door like their voices and fists could break through the silence I had built. It was exactly 12 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the microwave the entire time, each second ticking by like a heartbeat. They shouted my name again and again, voices frantic, torn between desperation and rage. "Jacqueline, you're ruining everything. We trusted you. How could you do this to your own family?" Each accusation bounced off the door, off the walls of my home, but none of it reached me. I was seated calmly on the couch, legs crossed, sipping from a mug they had given me for my 30th birthday. It was white with pink lettering and said in cheerful bold print, "One daughter." The irony made me smirk. It was almost poetic now. I didn't flinch. I didn't stand. I didn't even respond. I waited in silence until their voices faded, until the knocking stopped and the sidewalk outside fell quiet again. That's when I opened my laptop and typed one final email to my attorney. It wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. It outlined full legal separation, cancellation of the power of attorney, withdrawal from every financial document, and the severing of all shared obligations. I canceled the family phone plan, yes, the same one I'd been covering for 7 years. I cut off every streaming account they'd used under my name, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Netflix. I ended utilities that were running on my credit score because my mother's had long since fallen into disrepair. It was a complete blackout. Later that same afternoon, I made the mistake of checking Facebook, and there it was, my mother's post. She hadn't tagged me, of course. That would have been too direct. Instead, it was one of those vague, emotionally loaded status updates meant to weaponize sympathy. It's always the ones you love most who hurt you the deepest. The comment section lit up almost instantly. "You raised her too soft. She owes you everything. Kids today are so entitled." Entitled. That word hit me like a slap. I wasn't entitled. I had given them everything, out of love, not obligation. I gave because I believed in family, in support, in standing beside your people no matter what. But they had taken that belief and twisted it into something ugly, something that served them and destroyed me. That night, I changed my phone number, but before I disconnected it for good, I left one final voicemail message. "You chose comfort over truth. You broke trust that took years to build. Now you can rebuild without me." Then I blocked every number I knew they would use. No farewell, no retaliation, just silence. The same kind of silence they gave me whenever they took without asking. Only now that silence belonged to me. It was mine to hold and mine to protect. The next day, my cousin Joyce messaged me. "Did you really shut off the gas at your parents' place? It's freezing, Jacqueline. They have no heat." I stared at the message for a long time. At least 60 seconds passed before I typed back. I didn't shut it off, I just stopped paying for it. There was no reply, just those 4 little dots that show someone is typing. Then nothing. That silence, that sudden absence of judgment or explanation, somehow cut deeper than the loudest insult ever could. Later that day, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Please read this." It was from my mother. "We didn't raise you to be like this." I didn't even open it. I didn't need to, because that one sentence was all I needed to know that she still didn't understand. They did raise me to be like this. They raised me to believe that love had to be earned, that being part of a family wasn't about connection, it was about utility. They taught me that my worth was measured in sacrifices, how much I could give, how much I could fix, how silently I could carry their burdens. So yes, when I cut off the gas, reclaimed the truck, stopped paying the mortgage, and withdrew from every loan, I wasn't being heartless. I was returning everything they'd ever given me, wrapped in silence, shame, and guilt. My dad once told me, "Family doesn't keep score." A funny thing, he said that right after I paid off his second DUI fine. I didn't keep score, I just closed the whole account. That same month I started therapy. One of the first questions my therapist asked me was, "When did you first feel responsible for your parents?" I didn't hesitate. When I was 14. I remember it clearly. My mother had broken down crying because she couldn't pay the electric bill. I found a job sweeping hair at a local salon after school. That was the moment everything shifted. That's when I stopped being a child. That's when I became the one holding the house together, the one making sure the lights stayed on and everyone got fed. I wasn't being raised. All I've done since is grow up and finally walk away from people who refuse to grow with me. I don't feel guilty, I feel clear. Because here's the truth. Choosing yourself often feels like betrayal to the people who were only ever invested in using you. And I'm not available anymore, not for fixing, not for saving, not for being the sacrificial daughter. They renamed the family group chat. The threads I created were now used to talk about me, not to me. Joyce, the only one who still had any ounce of decency, sent me screenshots. She didn't include a message. Heckling heartless. We gave her everything, food, clothes, a roof over her head. She got successful and forgot where she came from. Let me remind you where I came from. I came from eviction notices taped to the front window. I came from watching my mother fake seizures just to get bill extensions. I came from my father borrowing money and calling it a gift. They say I should be grateful, and maybe I am, because I took that environment, those impossible odds, and I turned them into something stable, something secure, not just for me but for all of us. But they didn't want stability. They wanted submission. They wanted me to stay small, stay dependent, stay thankful, because my growth reminded them of their stagnation. So when I finally stood up, when I said enough, they didn't know how to cope. Suddenly I was cold, heartless, ungrateful. They forgot the dinners I paid for, the Christmas gifts I bought to make the holidays magical, the birthday parties I planned and funded, even though they never remembered mine. They never remembered the weight of what they took, only the highlights of what I gave. It was like their memory had been edited, curated to include every sacrifice I made for them, but only when it served as proof of my obligation. Never the exhaustion, never the resentment, just a record of favors with no mention of the cost. Joyce messaged me again. "I know it's messy," she wrote, "but they're still your parents." I stared at her words, feeling the guilt creep in like a fog. I began to type a reply, something long, emotional, trying to explain, but I stopped halfway through, deleted the whole thing, and started over. "If you break someone over and over again," I wrote, "you don't get to act surprised when they stop coming home." Then I hit send, blocked the thread, and silenced the guilt that always came knocking right behind them. That night, I shared a message on my private social media, the small circle of friends I trusted to understand. Boundaries don't make you mean, they just make the silence easier to live in. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't a call-out, just a truth. Within hours, messages poured in, some from old friends, others from strangers. "I needed this, I've been jackling too, thank you for saying what I couldn't." It reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my story wasn't an anomaly. I wasn't some selfish daughter or cold-hearted sister. I was a woman who finally chose to stop bleeding for people who never offered a bandage in return. The version of me they had passed around, the narrative of the ungrateful one, the one who forgot where she came from, was never real. It was a fabrication built to excuse their behavior. I had rewritten myself, and this version of me wasn't looking for redemption. She wasn't here to perform, to plead, or to earn love that should have been unconditional. She was here simply to live. It was a quiet Thursday. Rain drizzled softly outside, tapping against the windows like a gentle reminder that life was still moving. I lit a candle, brewed some tea, and sat in the stillness. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel tense. I didn't feel watched. I just existed, completely and fully. Then my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from my mom. "Jacqueline, it's your mother. Your dad he broke his leg. We're at county hospital, no insurance. They won't do the surgery unless we pay part of it. We know you're upset, but this is serious. This is family. Please just..." 4 minutes passed. I didn't move. I held the phone in my hand like it might burn me. I knew that voice, that tone, the one she reserved for emergencies, not apologies. It wasn't affection, it was strategy. It was the same tone she used every time they needed me, not out of love but out of necessity. There was always a crisis, always an urgent need, but never any remorse. I opened my laptop, pulled up a spreadsheet. The truth was undeniable. I could afford it. The money was there. I could write the check that would ease their situation. But instead, I opened a different folder, one labeled History. Inside were PDFs of emails, screenshots, account statements, everything they had done. The $45,000, 0 cents drained from my account without warning, the birthday dinner they charged to my card after forgetting the day altogether, the loans they defaulted on, leaving my name tarnished. I stared at it all. I let the reality of it wash over me, and just like that, their emergency stopped feeling like mine. It didn't feel urgent, it didn't even feel personal. It felt like another manipulation, dressed up in a hospital gown. So I didn't call back. Instead, I let the rain keep tapping. I stayed seated. I didn't pull out my checkbook. I didn't rush to fix what they had broken. I wrote a different kind of check, one made out to myself. A deposit into my peace fund. A promise, written not in dollars but in resolve. I will protect my peace, even from those who taught me how to betray it. The guilt, of course, came knocking anyway. It always does. That little voice, sharp and familiar, whispering, "You should help. You're the good one." But this time, I didn't answer. I shut that door hard, locked it. I texted Joyce, "Tell them I hope he heals, but I'm not going to hurt myself again just to ease their pain." She didn't reply, and for once that silence didn't burn. It didn't twist in my stomach like it used to. It felt clean. It felt like a breeze after a long storm. That night, I slept with the window cracked open, just enough to let in the cool air. I didn't leave my phone by the bed. No buzzing, no emergencies, no last-minute panic to brace for. I wasn't someone's safety net anymore. I wasn't a fixer waiting for the next fire to put out. I was resting, truly resting. Because letting go of people who never valued you isn't cruelty, it's survival, it's choosing to live. A few weeks later, I walked into my cousin Christine's wedding, head high, shoulders squared. I wasn't there to be forgiven. I wasn't there to impress or explain. I went because Christine mattered. Because she had always seen me not as the fixer or the provider, but as Jacqueline, just Jacqueline. Before the job titles, before the emotional strength, before the boundaries. I knew my parents would be there, of course they would, and they were. My mom wore a dress I'm sure she couldn't afford. My dad leaned heavily on a cane, his tux stiff and clearly rented. His limp seemed exaggerated, theatrical more than painful. As I entered the hall, their eyes found me immediately. There was no smile, no warmth, just observation, measuring me, watching for weakness. But I didn't flinch. I wore a black satin dress, not because I was mourning anything, but to show that I had transformed. I wasn't their daughter to control anymore. I wasn't a peacekeeper. I wasn't a lifeline. I was myself. They didn't say a word, but their silence screamed. "Talk to us, fix this, be who you always were." But I didn't move. I didn't bend. I didn't shrink. I sat at a table with Christine's friends. I laughed. I danced. I lived out loud. My joy became my quiet defiance, a message without words. You no longer get to decide how I feel. During dinner, my mother brushed past my table. She paused. Her hand rested lightly on the back of my chair. Her voice, soft, trembled slightly. "You look different." I looked up, locked eyes with her, and said simply, "I am." She opened her mouth to say more, but I raised my hand gently and added, "I'm here for Christine, not for you." That was all it took. Her eyes glistened, but it wasn't sadness, it wasn't grief, it was recognition. For the first time, she saw what she had truly lost. She saw me, not the version of me they could exploit, not the obedient daughter who kept giving. Just me. Free, whole, and finally, untouchable. I wasn't their rescue boat anymore. I had transformed into something else entirely, a lighthouse. I stood still, illuminated from a distance, bright and dependable, yet no longer reachable. Still shining, still grounded, but no longer someone they could climb aboard during a storm. I had become untouchable, and that was my peace. During the wedding toast, my father stood up, raised his glass, and glanced across the room straight at me. His eyes lingered, like he was waiting, expecting. Maybe he thought I'd nod, give a forgiving smile, or raise my glass in return. Maybe he hoped for a sign that I'd return to the daughter I used to be, the peacemaker. But I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't give him the relief of pretending nothing had happened. Because peace doesn't come from performance. Peace is not a polite nod in a room full of secrets. Real peace is forged in the fire of truth. It's earned by walking through pain and choosing not to shoulder someone else's burden anymore. I had carried theirs long enough. That weight no longer belonged to me. That night, I danced until my feet ached, my shoes abandoned somewhere under the table. I sang until my voice gave out, every note a release, and when the evening ended, I slipped out quietly, without a backward glance, without a forced goodbye. It wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of closure. When I got home, I did one last thing. I logged into my bank account and turned off the final autopay tied to my past, an old bill from my childhood address, still quietly pulling from my account each month. I hit cancel, and with it severed the last financial thread that had kept me bound to the girl who once paid everyone else's dues but never her own. It's been a year now. A full year since $45,000 disappeared from my account like a vanishing act. Except there was no magic, only betrayal. A year since I heard that voicemail that shattered more than trust. A year since I stopped answering their calls and started answering my own needs instead. The guilt still visits sometimes, but it doesn't roar the way it used to. It used to sound like sirens blaring in my chest, demanding action, demanding I fix it. Now it's just a distant hum I can silence with a single reminder, the truth. And the truth is, I gave them so much more than money. I gave them access to my heart. They used it like a debit card with no spending limit, swiping again and again, without asking, without gratitude. But that account is closed now. That door has been locked and the key belongs to me. In its place, I've built something new, a life I own. My own apartment, small but peaceful. My own business, still growing but mine entirely. A chosen family made of friends who know how to give as much as they receive. Friends who don't wield the word family like a guilt trip, who don't need to drain my energy just to feel close. This year, on my birthday, my phone didn't ring. No fake message, no obligatory card from my parents, just silence. But later that evening, there was a gentle knock at the door. I opened it to find Christine, standing there with a homemade cake and candles. She looked at me with soft eyes and said, "You were never the problem. You were just the first one brave enough to escape." We lit the candles together, no wishes, no noise, just a shared breath. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes healing looks like not opening the door, even when loneliness shows up dressed in the familiar face of someone you once called family. I stopped chasing blood ties. Now, I choose soul ties, the kind of people who don't ask for your sacrifice just to feel secure, the kind who call just to hear your voice, not because they need something. Mom still posts cryptic updates online. Dad still spins stories of victimhood when family conversations drift my way. But their words no longer echo in my life. I've built walls, not out of bitterness but out of self-respect. And now, it doesn't matter what they say because I don't belong to them anymore. I belong to me. Fully. Finally. Freely.